Welcome and thank you for joining us this afternoon for Healthy Eating for Cancer Prevention. My name is Kathy Chern and I am the Consumer Health Librarian at East Brunswick Public Library. Today's program is brought to you by Rutgers Cancer Institute of New Jersey, the Center for Asian Health at St. Barnabas Medical Center, and the library's Just for the Health of It initiative to promote community health and wellness. Our speaker today is Michelle Jansen, Community Cancer Control Specialist at Rutgers Cancer Institute. Please be aware that this talk is being recorded. Please keep your microphones muted and your webcams off. The recording will be available at ebpl.org/YouTube. If you have any questions, please type them into the chat box. The speaker will answer questions at the end of the talk. The speaker presenting will not be able to offer medical advice to attendees during this program. And without further ado, I'll turn things over to Michelle.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Catherine. That was a really wonderful introduction. And thank you so much, everyone, for being here and dedicating an hour of your time to us. We have a wonderful presentation in store for you, and we promise it will be really well worth your time this afternoon. So as Catherine had mentioned, my name is Michelle Jansen. I currently serve as a community cancer control specialist here at Rutgers Cancer Institute of New Jersey. And just to give you a little bit more about my background is I've been in the nutrition field for the past 5 years. It was actually a second career for me. I have a background in education. So I just love nutrition, and it's something I've been very passionate about for a long time. And for the last 3 years, I served and I currently serve as an adjunct professor of nutrition as well. So I teach different types of nutrition classes throughout the academic year. So I'm really thrilled to be able to provide this presentation to you today. But we always kind of like to do a general assessment of what everyone's knowledge is coming in. So we're going to launch a brief poll. So we're going to push out some questions to you, and we just ask that you take about a minute to kind of look these questions over. We have 3 different ones, and you can either answer true or false. And the statement for our first question is there are 5 different food groups, and you can choose true or false. And our second question is you should select foods with 5 grams or more of fiber per serving. And finally, our last question is non-starchy veggies can help to prevent more than 12 different types of cancer. So we'll give everyone just about another 30 seconds to complete this. Perfect. So we're down to the last 5 seconds, and it looks like we have mostly everyone has voted. So I'm just going to end the polling and share the results with you. So we actually had some differences in opinion for our first question. So we had some that answered true, some that answered false. We're all pretty much unanimous on question number 2 that you should select foods with 5 grams or more of fiber per serving. And then we also had some differences in responses for question number 3, which is non-starchy veggies can help to prevent more than 12 different types of cancer. So you'll be sure, we promise you that at the very end of this session today, you will know the answers to each of these questions. So we'll stop sharing our results and we'll do a deep dive into our presentation today. So what we hope that you'll be able to take from your time with us is that you'll demonstrate knowledge of the big nutrients that play a role in maintaining and promoting our health. And you're also going to learn about how foods really work together in the context of our environment to promote and maintain our health, because we know that it's never just one superfood that can really provide and promote our health, right? And then we're going to talk about something called the New American Plate and how you can really take baby steps to make that transition from the old American plate, which is the standard American diet, to what we call the New American Plate. So before we really get into a lot of the nutrition concepts that are related to cancer prevention, we always like to start with the basics. So there are 5 different food groups that we get our nutrients from. We get our nutrients from fruits, from vegetables, grains, dairy, and protein foods. But over time, there have actually been different numbers of food groups. If you go back in history, there was actually a time, believe it or not, where all of our different foods were categorized in 7 different groups. But for today, right now, we have 5 different food groups that we'll be referring to. And all of these food groups compose what we call My Plate. So this is from the United States Department of Agriculture. And this is a really great visual representation of what your plate should look like for breakfast, for lunch, and for dinner. And one of the things that you'll notice on this plate is that half of your plate should actually be made up of fruits and vegetables. And then we have about a quarter of your plate should be made up of some type of protein food. And this can be, animal-based protein foods or plant-based protein foods such as tofu, tempeh, things like that. As well as beans. We also have a portion for grains, and we encourage you to consume most of your grains, if not all, in a whole grain form. And we'll talk about that as well in this presentation. And then you'll also see the section for dairy. I know there are some individuals that are lactose intolerant, so they actually have a harder time breaking down dairy products that are from cows, of course, right? So here you can actually put water there if you're lactose intolerant, or this would be a section where if you use any type of alternative based milk products like coconut milk or almond milk, soy milk, you can actually do a lot of substitutions there. And right now on the market, they are just expanding the inventory of different types of alternate based yogurts. So there's all different types of coconut based yogurts, almond based yogurts, soy based yogurts that are completely dairy free. So we're going to talk about the big nutrients that really make up the foods that we eat. So we know macronutrients just refers to big nutrients, right? And there's 3 different categories here. So a lot of you may have heard about carbs, right? There's always some type of low carb diet out there. I know right now the paleo diet and the keto diet is all of the rage, and those diets, encourage you to restrict your intake of carbohydrates. But we need carbohydrates for health. We actually can't live without them long term. Macronutrients are also proteins, right? We know that proteins break down into something called amino acids, and they're really the building blocks for the muscles and the tissues in our body. So any part of your body that you can physically touch right now. So if you were to touch your skin is made out of protein, your hair is made out of protein, your fingernails, and then fat is also an essential component of the diet. So these are the big nutrients that we cannot live without. We have to get them from the different types of foods that we eat every day. And there's also micronutrients, and micro just stands for small. So these mean small nutrients. But just because we call them micronutrients or small nutrients doesn't mean that they're not important in the context of our diet, because we cannot live without vitamins and minerals. Our body literally couldn't function, right? We know that there are 13 different vitamins that are necessary for our health. There are many different types of minerals out there in our environment and our world, but there's 13 that are absolutely essential to our health. And ideally, we want to be getting these from different types of whole foods that we're incorporating into our eating patterns and our diets each and every day. So we can't live without carbohydrates, protein, and fat. These are really building blocks for our health. And we also cannot live without vitamins and minerals. So let's talk about carbohydrates, because they're always in the news when it comes to nutrition. It's always the rage, and it's a source of debate among a lot of nutritionists about how many carbohydrates you should be eating per day, what type of carbohydrates you should be eating per day. And we know that carbohydrates come in many, many different forms, but carbohydrates, basically, these are foods that when we eat them, they break down into sugar or glucose. And this glucose literally provides energy to our brains, and it provides energy to our entire body, right? To all the cells in our body. And it enables us to do everything that we do to live, to work, and to play. And our brain's preferred fuel is glucose. It needs glucose to function, right? So even if you're doing some type of keto diet or paleo diet, there's always some amount of carbohydrate in there because your brain runs on glucose. It needs glucose, right? But we want to be sure that we're feeding our brain and our body good carbs, right? Because we want our glucose and what is essentially fuel for our bodies, right? It's kind of like if you were to go out and buy a BMW tomorrow, you would be filling the tank of that car with premium gas, right? You wouldn't be using any type of low grade gas because you want that car to really look and to drive and perform at its best through its entire life cycle. And this is essentially how I think of all the different big nutrients. When we're thinking about what to eat and what to put on our plates, we really want quality, right? So we want these quality good carbs here. And as we can see with the good carbohydrate choices, we know it's the fruits and vegetables, right? All those wonderful plants that help to build and promote our health through our lifespan that we want to be loading up on our plates. Nuts also have a certain amount of carbs, right? They're also a really great protein source, so we want to be sure to incorporate those into our diet. Whole grains, so any type of whole grain bread product, oatmeal, you know, any of the ancient grains like bulgur, amaranth, you may have heard of quinoa, brown rice, right? These are not they're not refined and processed, so they retain all of their original nutrients as they're found in nature. The problem really starts though, because the reality is, unfortunately, that we live in an environment and a food landscape where we are surrounded by not so great carbohydrate choices. And we are so surrounded by these not so great carbohydrate choices that it can actually be really hard in our day-to-day lives to make the healthy choice because we're surrounded by so many not so great carbohydrate choices, right? I know even in the work environment, you know, if you forget to bring your lunch to work one day, or maybe you're out on vacation, you know, we have a landscape that is filled with fast food joints, and it can be really hard to actually buy something healthy when you want healthy food. So we're surrounded by foods like that break down really, really quickly into sugar, and they actually cause our blood sugar to skyrocket and then to plummet, and we get very tired and fatigued, and this can really wear on our body. But when we pick these good carbohydrate choices, it's a steady fuel because they're packed with fiber, they're packed with different types of vitamins and minerals, and it actually keeps our blood sugar levels on a nice even keel so that we're able to feel full during the day. You know, it really helps to promote our health. We're getting a lot of valuable nutrients from these good carbohydrate choices. But when we are surrounded by these not so great carbohydrate choices and we fuel our body with this, we literally crash. If you think about what most people eat for breakfast, it's actually some type of breakfast cereal, so like a Rice Krispies or a Chex, and these are very refined and processed foods, or Cheerios. And then, you know, they may add a little sugar on it, or, you know, pour some milk in it, which is fine. But if you think of that carbohydrate choice, you would be so much more filled up if you had a bowl of oatmeal instead, because about 2 hours after you eat that bowl of cereal, it's like you never ate anything. You're starving because it caused a really high rush of sugar in your blood, and then your body kind of panicked. It released a lot of insulin, and now your blood sugar is low. So your body is prompting you to eat again. And that's what these not so great carbohydrate choices do. And this can really set our bodies up for inflammation, which can then set the cancer process in motion. So we really encourage you in your day-to-day choices to really choose the good carbohydrate choices. And good carbohydrates are super important for so many reasons because they contain fiber. And fiber is such a key to health because in our guts have so many bacteria, literally trillions of bacteria live in our guts. And these bacteria are really responsible for the functioning of our immune system, as well as our overall health, right? Because they're always maintaining our health. They're making sure there's not inflammation in our bodies anywhere. They're protecting us against cancer. So, you know, when just say we eat something like an apple or a pepper or a banana, right? This food has fiber. Our bodies, our digestive system, so our small intestine and our large intestine is not really designed to break down fiber. So the fiber actually goes into our colon where all the bacteria that live there, they actually ferment the fiber and they create something called a short chain fatty acid that can literally stop cancer cells from growing in their tracks. So think about how powerful that is, right? And our intestines together, our small intestine, which absorbs most of the nutrients from the food that we eat, and our large intestine or colon, which helps us to excrete any food waste, right? They work together as a harmonious system. If you put those two together, your intestinal system is 25 feet long. And it's that long for a reason, because if we're eating foods in their natural state, it actually takes our bodies a while to break them down. But when we eat a lot of the not so great carbohydrate choices, a lot of it is already pre-digested and pre-broken down. So by the time it gets to the first part of your intestine, it's already absorbed into your bloodstream. And that's really not how our bodies are designed to digest food. We know that fiber does a few extra things, right? It really helps to bulk up our stool to increase the transit time from our fuel when we're eating to stool when we're excreting, right? Which should be about 24 to 48 hours. If we're eating fiber, a very special type of fiber called soluble type fiber can help to bind sugar and cholesterol and get it out of our system so that it doesn't spike our blood sugar, it doesn't make our cholesterol levels high. And most importantly, it can bind and transport different toxins out of our body, because we know we live in an environment, unfortunately, where we're exposed to toxins, but our body is very wise and it can actually get rid of these if we're eating the right kinds of food, right? Especially foods that are high in fiber. So one of the questions on our pre-survey today was whether you should be eating foods with 5 grams of fiber or more, and that is absolutely true. As you can see on the sample label for frozen lasagna, if you look at the very first part, you'll actually see that there's 4 servings for this package. So this package is probably something like a Stouffer's, Lunchable frozen lasagna. A serving size is 1 cup. So if you were to eat this whole package, we have to multiply all these numbers here times 4, right? But if we go down to total carbohydrate, we'll actually see that dietary fiber is 4 grams. For that 1 cup, we actually would want it to be at least 5 grams, because this is not a high fiber food. The more fiber a food has, the better. And then if you do struggle with diabetes and you're carb counting, one of the things that you can do is, if you're eating foods that have 5 grams of fiber or more per serving, you can actually deduct that from your total carbohydrates. So just say, we'll pretend that this food has 5 grams of fiber for 1 cup. We would actually deduct that from 34. So 34 minus 5 is 29. So it would reduce that carbohydrate load because it's binding some of the sugars in that food. We know that some really great sources of fiber, as I mentioned a little earlier, nuts, believe it or not, I know most people just think of them as a protein source, but they're a really great source of fiber. Any type of whole grain, just beware when you're reading labels and you're choosing a bread, choose breads that have whole wheat, not whole wheat flour. So you're looking for whole wheat, whole oats, whole barley, rye, not rye flour. If it has flour next to it, it's basically the equivalent of eating a Wonder Bread or a white bread, where it's going to be broken down in your system very, very quickly. It's going to be a very not so good carbohydrate choice, right? And then we have the colors of the rainbow. So we really want to be eating fruits and vegetables from all different families, all different, colors of the rainbow, because they're each giving us different nutrients and vitamins and minerals that really are going to promote our health in the long run. One of the reasons we encourage you to choose whole foods is that when any type of whole grain is refined, so just say, you're taking a rye bread, but then you're kind of processing it and you're making it into a more refined food, you're losing a lot of these vitamins and minerals. And most of the manufacturers, they'll add some back, but not all. So whole grains have a lot of vitamin E, which we know is an antioxidant and can really prevent our cells from being damaged. And once our cells are damaged, this can really set the stage for cancer, because then that DNA is really replicating in a way, and those cells are dividing in a way that they shouldn't. And that's not what we want. Selenium is also a powerful cancer fighter, so we want to be sure to be eating foods that naturally contain selenium. We don't want to be taking supplements. Whole grains also have copper and zinc. They work together in a happy marriage to maintain, our cells' integrity, to make sure that our cells are doing what they should and dividing in the way that they should. And B vitamins give us energy. They actually help our bodies break down, use, and manufacture protein, right? Because they're helping to really regenerate our tissues and helping our cells to divide. And they also provide us with energy. And B vitamins are absolutely necessary for a healthy metabolism, because B vitamins are what really help you to break down and use the nutrients in food as they're going through our digestive system. So you're probably wondering, well, okay, for cancer prevention, like how much fiber should I be eating? Current studies show that most Americans, believe it or not, it's 80 to 90% of Americans do not get the daily amount of required fiber for cancer prevention and, more importantly, just for overall health. The studies show that most Americans eat about 12 to 15 grams of fiber, so they're very fiber deficient. So they're really not eating whole grain food products. They're not really eating, fruits and veggies. It's a lot of that processed food, those not so great carbohydrate choices. Right now, the Institute of Medicine recommends for men 50 years of age or younger, 38 grams of fiber per day. And then, once they're over 50, it would be 30. For women, it's 25 regardless of age. So you always want to be getting at least 25 grams of fiber per day. So what would this actually look like? Because most of us, especially here in America, we don't think of things in grams. We think of things in like tablespoons or cups, right? So this would essentially be about 4.5 to 5 cups of different types of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. Right now, the recommendation is for you to eat about 2 to 2.5 cups of fruit and 2 to 2.5 cups of vegetables, and then to have some whole grains in there as well. So fruits and vegetables are especially important because they actually provide us with something called phytochemicals. And a phytochemical, these are some of the most important cancer fighters that we have in our bodies today. And they actually come packaged in fruits and vegetables. And there's more than 10,000 different phytochemicals that we get simply by eating a variety of fruits and vegetables. And you may be familiar with carotenoids. Carotenoids are a phytochemical that give carrots their very brilliant orange color. They also help to promote our eye health and prevent macular degeneration, right, as we get older. And when we're moving from a room that's very dark to very light, that's the reason we have night vision, are because of the phytochemical called carotenoids. Our eyes can literally adjust in a matter of nanoseconds from lightness to darkness. And that's why we actually need these phytochemicals, right? Flavonoids are in over 100 different types of fruits and vegetables. And they're really important because they actually regulate how our cells talk to one another and how our genes express themselves. So if something goes awry with our gene expressions or how our cells are talking to each other, this can also give rise to cancer. It can start the cancer process. And allicin is another really great phytochemical that can help to protect you against cancer. So we know that good carbs reduce our risk of cancer. They reduce specifically, the research is very firm on this. There are hundreds of studies that actually prove and demonstrate this. So good carbs like your fruits, your veggies, your whole grains, they reduce your risk of mouth cancer, esophageal cancer, stomach cancer, as well as colorectal cancer. And we can see here that this is kind of what normal cells look like, right? They're very uniform and even. They're dividing in a very predictable way. But the problem really comes into play when now you have cells that are dividing in a way that they shouldn't be, and they look very different from the surrounding cells. They're dividing everywhere, right? There's kind of no rhyme or reason. They look different. They feel different. So this is kind of the difference between what a normal cell looks like and what a cancer cell looks like. One of the things that I also wanted to mention is that animal products, when it comes to fiber, in cancer prevention, just remember that animal products do not contain any fiber. So think of cheese or milk or eggs, poultry, red meat. There's no fiber in animal products, right? The fiber really comes from fruits, veggies, and whole grains. And one of the fruits that I always like to highlight is an apple, because we all have heard of the quote, an apple a day keeps the doctor away. And this really, the more research we've done, it's become very clear that this is true. So we know that eating an apple can reduce your risk of estrogen receptor negative breast cancer. There's actually different types of breast cancers. There's estrogen receptor positive, estrogen receptor negative, triple negative breast cancer. The negative breast cancers are actually much harder to treat, and it's a much more aggressive form of breast cancer. So imagine just incorporating an apple into your diet most days of the week can reduce your risk for some of the most aggressive forms of breast cancer. They're also packed with a phytochemical called flavonols, right? And we know that flavonoids are basically those plant chemicals that can really kind of seep through our tissues and make sure that our cells are dividing in the way that they should be. They're especially important for protecting us against colorectal cancer. And we also have really good evidence. It's limited right now, but all the research studies are showing the same thing. They're very consistent that eating apples can also reduce your risk of lung cancer, especially if you're a smoker. So apple a day definitely keeps the doctor away. In the later part of my life here, I never ate asparagus when I was younger. It's just something that I wasn't exposed to growing up or as an adult. And I started making it and eating it. I usually prepare it with a bit of lemon in the oven, and I love it. And asparagus is incredibly powerful because when it comes to cancer prevention, adding asparagus to your plate can help reduce the risk of aerodigestive cancers. And what this word means, aerodigestive, it just means cancers, nasal cancers, cancers of the pharynx, the larynx, your stomach, your bladder, as well as your colon and your rectum. So this is pretty powerful stuff. The reason for this is that asparagus provides us with some really high amounts of vitamin B9, or what we know to be folate. B9 is folate, right? It also provides us with vitamin K, as well as, believe it or not, it's also a plant-based source of iron, or what we call non-heme iron. So asparagus is amazing. We know that blueberries are really touted because they are packed with antioxidants and fiber. And we know that just as we go about our everyday life, we're all exposed to chemicals in our environment, from the hand soap that we're using, to the laundry detergent we're putting in our washer machine, to the air that we're breathing, or contaminants in our water. If our body didn't have any type of defense mechanism against these toxins, you would see cancer everywhere, right? We would probably all have cancer, but our bodies has a built-in defense mechanism. And this is what is called an antioxidant. So toxins in our body create something called a free radical. And these free radicals are very dangerous. It's kind of like, imagine your car rusting out. That's kind of what can happen to the inside of your body with all of these free radicals. But if you're eating foods with antioxidants, this actually protects your cells against this rust and this damage, right? And just in the course of our normal metabolism, our body actually generates through metabolism some free radicals. So it's really important for us to eat foods that are packed with antioxidants because they really preserve the integrity of our cells. Blueberries are also chock full of vitamin C, as well as vitamin K, which is the vitamin that essentially helps our blood to clot. And we know that we need to get 50% of our vitamin K from the foods that we eat, and the other 50% of vitamin K that we need on an everyday basis is made by our colon. It's actually made by the bacteria in our colon as they're fermenting fiber in the foods that we're eating. So even more reason to eat fiber. We also know that blueberries can decrease your risk for mouth, larynx, pharynx, lung, stomach, and colorectal cancers. And these are the cancers we refer to as aerodigestive cancers. and grapefruit. So grapefruits are a really low calorie snack. They are packed with phytochemicals or plant. We know that phyto means plant in Latin. They are packed with plant nutrients or plant chemicals. So some of the vitamins and phytonutrients that they're packed with, on the vitamin side, it's vitamin C and vitamin K. And then on the phytonutrient side, it's carotenoids and something called terpenes. So these go a long way in promoting our health. The only word of caution I will offer you here is that if you're on any type of medication, check in with both your doctor and your pharmacist, because if you eat grapefruit, it can actually interfere with how your medication is metabolized and processed in your body. It can interfere with the enzymes in your liver that are responsible for breaking that medication down. So it can either increase the amount of medication in your blood to a dangerous level, or it can actually decrease the effectiveness of that medication. This only happens with very specific medications, but definitely check in with your doctor just to make sure you don't have any conflicts with eating a grapefruit if you're taking medication. We also know kale is an antioxidant powerhouse. So kale really helps to fortify, it supplements our body's antioxidant defenses, right? It's protecting our cells. It's also providing us with carotenoids, that awesome phytochemical that we need for health, folate, as well as lots of fiber. And we encourage you to eat your beans and greens, because these are another wonderful source, food-based source of folate or vitamin B9 in our diet. And this is especially important when it comes to preventing colorectal cancer, because folate is really responsible for helping our cells and our tissues to divide the way that they should. That's why they always recommend for pregnant women that they take some type of synthetic folate, which is known as folic acid. They take a folic acid supplement. So as that baby is developing, all of those tissues and cells are dividing the way that they should, preventing any type of birth defects. So we don't encourage any type of supplements for cancer prevention. We encourage you to really get everything that you need through a really nice whole foods, plant-based diet. So we also encourage you to clean out the crap. So CRAP was a lovely acronym that a fellow nutritionist had come up with. And I really just had to like beg and borrow this, because I love the acronym. And CRAP basically stands for calorie rich and processed. And, these are a lot of the foods that we're surrounded with. So just say, you want to go out and buy a healthy snack, and you're going to buy a yogurt. And there's a huge yogurt section in most grocery stores today, but all yogurts are not created equal. And a lot of them are really loaded up with added sugar. So I actually took a picture of this one here. We can see, and this is a very small container of yogurt. It's only 6 ounces, so it's not even a cup. So if you can just imagine and visualize like a very small, less than 1 cup serving here. We're going to check out the serving size on our nutrition facts label. So this is for the whole container. And now if we go down to total carbohydrate, we see that it has 33 grams of total carbohydrate, and 27 of those grams of carbohydrate are coming from sugars, and much of this sugar is added. So in yogurt, if it's an animal-based, like a cow's-based yogurt, cows-based, any type of milk or yogurt product naturally will have 12 grams of sugar. That's just naturally occurring sugars in that milk or that dairy product, right? The rest is all added. So in this instance, you have 15 grams of sugar that is added here. And when it comes to grams, 1 pack of sugar is 4 grams. 1 teaspoon of sugar is also 4 grams. So if you divide 27 by 4, you actually come up with just over, 6 packs of sugar. So that's kind of what this is. It's the equivalent of eating 6 packs of sugar. Now, when we look at this vitamin water here, this is something that before I got into nutrition, I thought this was a healthy choice. I didn't realize how much this was actually damaging my health in the long run, because it's marketed very healthy. It's multi-V, it's got vitamins in it, it's lemonade, and it says it has zinc. This is really great. But again, we have to always start at the top of that nutrition facts label. So if we look here, this is 2.5 serving sizes. So one serving size is 8 fluid ounces, but most people, when they drink this bottle, they're drinking the whole bottle at once, which means we have to multiply all the numbers that we see here on this nutrition facts label by 2.5. So if we actually go down to total carbohydrate, we see that the carbohydrate and the sugar are exactly the same, right? Because the carbohydrate is coming from the added sugars to this product. So, we actually have to multiply 13 by 2.5, and that puts us well over 30 grams of sugar, which is just about 7 to 8 packs of sugar in here, which is way too much, right? So this is not, a healthy option on any level, and it could really set up a lot of inflammation in our body because our bodies aren't designed to handle all of this added sugar, right? It's that if we go back to that metaphor of putting really bad fuel in our nice expensive car that we want to look good and feel good for many, many years to come. So in the nutrition side of things, in my nutrition world here, we've always been asked for many, many years, well, why doesn't the Dietetics Association and nutritionists, they need to tell us how much added sugar we can have every day. And the Dietetic Association wouldn't do that because ideally we want to be avoiding added sugars as much as possible, right? But the reality is that we live in a food landscape where we are surrounded by food products that have lots and lots of added sugars. So, with fruits, for example, fruits have naturally occurring sugars, but it's processed very differently than a product like our vitamin water that just has pure added table sugar to it. They're not the same. They're processed and digested very, very differently, right? So the American Heart Association, though, they did come out with a recommendation. And what their recommendation is that if for the entire day, that men do not consume more than 9 teaspoons, which would be 36 grams of added sugar in their diet. So if we actually look at this, this lemonade drink, the vitamin water, that's putting us pretty close to that, right? For women, the recommendation is to not consume any more than 6 teaspoons or 25 grams of added sugars per day. I know that hopefully in 2021, we're going to see a new nutrition label that will specifically have added sugars because like I said, some food products like the dairy products, as well as of course fruits, they have naturally occurring sugars, but those sugars are processed a bit differently in the context of that whole food, right? We also encourage you to limit the consumption of fast and processed foods. These foods cause a lot of inflammation in our bodies over time, which causes a lot of damage. And if you think about fast food, I know for me, I would always get really, really bad stomach aches, especially after I ate a very particular brand of fast food. My stomach, which is like a stomach of steel, I would literally be in pain for like 2 days and I couldn't figure out why. Well, it's actually because when you think of how these foods are processed and made, especially if you're eating fried foods in your typical restaurant or your fast food restaurant, most of the oil that they're using is rancid because they're heating and cooling that oil constantly throughout the day. And they're using vegetable oils, and vegetable oils, they each have different heat points. And if they go over a certain heat point, that oil becomes rancid and can cause a lot of free radicals in our body. And when you think of just, literally fast food and even restaurants, they tend to use this oil for months on end. Some even use the same oil to cook foods over and over again for a year. So think about just what that can do to our bodies, right? We also know when it comes to coffee and cancer, we have really great evidence that coffee can also reduce your risk of colorectal cancer, but we know definitively that coffee can also decrease your risk of endometrial and liver cancers as well. And this is just a plain black coffee. It's not any of the Dunkachinos or the lattes or the macchiatos that you find that can have a lot of added sugars and preservatives to them as well. So let's talk about protein, right? What type of protein food should we be eating for health and for cancer prevention? Well, let's talk about what protein is first, right? So we know protein is essentially a building block of our body. So we need protein just for the structure and function of our body. And proteins, whenever we eat a protein food, so I have a picture of peanuts here, these essentially break down into something called amino acids that are then used to really maintain the structure and form of our bodies. So if you think about your muscles, your bones, your skin, this is all protein. So we cannot live without it. But when it comes to protein, we do encourage you to avoid any type of processed meat. So think your deli meats such as sliced ham, turkeys, bologna, liver wished, any type of beef jerky, sausage, kibasi. These foods are usually cured, preserved in some type of way. And what can happen is this can really disturb the balance of good bacteria in our gut. It can actually start to breed some bad bacteria. And then when this food goes into our stomach, the nitrates that are in processed meat actually get chemically transformed into nitrates, and the nitrates actually cause direct DNA damage. So we know without a doubt, the research has been clear on this for the past decade, that processed meat is a known human carcinogen, which means carcinogen just means it's a cancer causing agent. So if you do eat sandwiches every day for lunch, we encourage you, even if it's baby steps and it's, you're reducing it by one sandwich a week and really trying to switch out to something else that's also budget friendly, we really encourage you to, eat processed meat as little as possible and ultimately to try to really eliminate it from your diet. And when it comes to red meat can be part of a healthy diet, but we wouldn't want to be eating it twice a day for lunch and dinner, right? We want to limit our consumption to 12 to 18 ounces of red meat per week. And this is because red meat, your body absorbs about 60% of what's called heme iron from red meat. It's a very absorbable form of iron. But your body kind of has a harder time regulating it. So if you're eating a lot of red meat, you're consuming a lot of this iron, right? And this iron can basically lead to those free radicals that can damage our DNA. And they also, in the research right now, what they're finding is that for whatever reason, all of this heme iron can really increase the pathogenic or the bad gut bacteria that promotes inflammation and can really start the cancer process. So, red meat can be part of a healthy diet, but you really wouldn't want to have more than 2 to 3 servings per week. And this is some of the strongest evidence that we have when it comes to diet, nutrition, physical activity, and colorectal cancer. So for those of you that were in our Nutrition for Colorectal Cancer workshop on Tuesday, we talked about how physical activity can go a long way in really decreasing your risk for colorectal cancer, because the colon is a muscle, it craves movement, and it needs movement to do its job effectively, right? Of really getting that digested food out of our system. We also know that alcoholic drinks, as well as obesity can increase your risk for more than 11 different types of cancers, because of it really starts a cascade of inflammation in our body, because all of those extra fat cells, they get very agitated and they get very inflamed, and they start sending all of these inflammatory signals out throughout our body, which can actually cause cancer in the long term. So we actually encourage you to take the old American plate, which typically looks like this, right? It's really heavy on the starchy forms of carbohydrate here. We have a lot of peas, and peas are good in their own right, right? But we would really want to add some maybe dark leafy green veggies to this plate. We have our mashed potatoes, and we've got this heaping hunk of steak here. Now the steak is about anywhere from a 12 to 16 ounce portion, which is more than anyone would need in a single meal. This is actually 3 portions in one. So ideally, if we were to make the transition, we want to really transition out. We can have our steak and eat it too, but we're going to have a smaller steak, maybe a 6-ounce steak, and we're going to add some green beans rather than the peas, and get a lot of fiber through our brown rice as a whole grain, right? We're getting that selenium, that copper and zinc, all of those awesome B vitamins here. And then ultimately, over time, we would want to make the transition to what the American Institute of Cancer Research calls the new American plate. And this is really where you're choosing leaner protein items. So instead of maybe the red meat, we can add some chicken here. We're really eating a rainbow of veggies. So we've got broccoli, which has a lot of powerful phytonutrients, right? It has sulforaphane, which is a really great phytonutrient that can help us to fight cancer. We have green and yellow zucchini, red peppers, as well as we're getting a lot of fiber through these veggies, but also we have a nice serving of brown rice. So next, let's talk about fat. I know for many years, in the 80s and 90s, fat was kind of the villain. It was the nutritional villain that we should avoid. So we actually saw an era of all of these low fat items. And that actually corresponded to the obesity epidemic, right? Because fat makes food very palatable. And when you take fat out of food, you actually have to add a lot of added sugar into it in order to make that food tasty in some way, right? And fat, we actually need it for our health. Our brain is mostly fat. The outer layer of our cells are surrounded by cholesterol and fat. So we need different types of fat in our diet to really help regulate our immune systems and maintain our health. We just don't want too much of certain types of fats in our diet, right? So when we think of fat, these break down into something called fatty acids, right? So fatty acids are kind of the building blocks of the outside layer of our cells. They also help to protect our bodies, right? They add a layer of cushion to our bodies. And there are many different types of foods that contain healthy fats that really promote our health. And tree nuts are one of them. We know that tree nuts can reduce the risk of colorectal cancer and stage 3 cancer survivors that have had colorectal cancer. It actually reduces the recurrence of the cancer by 42% and reduces their overall mortality or death rates by 57%. And there's all different types of tree nuts out there. I've just listed a few here for you, but nuts are really important too because they contain a lot of vitamin E, and we know that vitamin E is such an important antioxidant in helping to protect us with cancer. Now, when it comes to nuts in particular, vitamin E is very high in almonds. It's also very high in hazelnuts as well as in pine nuts. So we know that vitamin E can really help to protect our cells against that DNA damage. We do just warn you though, if you consume Brazil nuts, not to eat them every day and not to eat handfuls at a time. One Brazil nut contains your entire day's worth of selenium. So each day we actually only need 55 micrograms of selenium, but one Brazil nut can really have anywhere from like 60 to 68 micrograms. So if you're eating, handfuls at a time, this can actually cause a very specific type of toxicity, a very dangerous type of selenium toxicity. But Brazil nuts are the only nuts that have that problem. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to eat too many Brazil nuts. And you don't want to eat them every day, right? Because that can build up in your system over time. There's a fat that has been in the news lately. I know the federal government has tried to get food manufacturers to eliminate it, but the problem is it's still hidden in a lot of our foods. And this really comes down to a food labeling issue because right now our federal government allows manufacturers to state that a food doesn't have any trans fat when in reality it does. It just has to be under like a 0.5 milligrams. A gram of 0.5 grams of trans fat. So it doesn't mean that the food actually doesn't have it, it's just not listed. Most of the foods that do have trans fat, you'll normally find trans fat in your shelf stable baked goods. So I think of like the Twinkie, right, as like the quintessential model of trans fat because that's really what a Twinkie was, right? It had a lot of trans fat in it. But surprisingly, I went to some of the corner stores and bodegas in New Brunswick, and I found trans fat in ketchups. So if you ever see hydrogenated, any type of hydrogenated oil, so hydrogenated palm oil, hydrogenated coconut oil or whatever it might be, or partially hydrogenated oil, just remember that is code for trans fat. They're not going to say that it's trans fat. They will put it under that disguise. But if you see partially hydrogenated oil on a label, please stay away from that because that product does have trans fat. We know that trans fat is linked to an increased risk of heart disease and cardiovascular disease. And it really sets up a lot of inflammation in our bodies that can cause cancer down the road. So definitely avoid that. We also know that we need different types of fat in our diet, right? We need omega-3 fats, we need omega-6, we need omega-9. Omega-3 fats are wonderful. They are very important for brain health. We're finding now that a lot of people are deficient in omega-3 fats. We kind of have some ratios that are very unbalanced. But if you want to get more omega-3 fats into your diet, if you follow more of a vegetarian or vegan diet, walnuts are a very wonderful source. They're a great source of omega-3 fats. They have a little over 2 grams per serving, as well as if you're not vegan or vegetarian, or if you're a pescatarian, if you eat fish, salmon is actually a really great source, a healthy source of omega-3 fats to add into your diet. We also know that alcohol, a lot of people think that drinking wine, is going to give them antioxidants. It has, red wine has resveratrol in it. It can be cancer protective, but that's actually not the case. Alcohol is a toxin. It kills our liver cells. It makes our liver work harder. So if you do drink alcohol, just please try to drink it very lightly, because the more that you drink, especially on a daily basis, the higher your risk is for cancer. So before we close out our session today, I just wanted to do a quick pitch and shout out to the New Jersey Cancer Education and Early Detection Program. This is a really wonderful program that we have in all 21 counties in the state of New Jersey. It is funded through the New Jersey Department of Health, and it's actually local agencies that provide education and outreach around cancer prevention and screening. And what's really great is that the NJC program, they will work with the local health systems in the area, and they can provide free screenings for breast, prostate, cervical, or colorectal cancer. If you are 250% or below the federal poverty level, you are currently unemployed, or you're uninsured or underinsured, they'll be happy to work with you. They're amazing to work with. So we definitely encourage you to really check out the services that are available for NJC if you're interested in getting a cancer screening for any of these cancers, but you're having a hard time doing that, with insurance reasons or financial reasons. We have lots of resources available for you. So I thank you for attending this session today. And I'm just going to run a really, really quick poll because we want to know the answers to all of our questions. So I'm going to push this out to everyone, and we'll give you all a few moments to respond, and we'll see how we do at the end. Great, and everyone is so great. You guys are really, really fast. So we have just about half the responses in. So we'll just wait a few more minutes. Perfect, and I'm going to end my poll here and share the results with you. So yeah, we know that there are 5 different food groups, right? We have our fruits, our vegetables, our protein, our whole grains, as well as our dairy. Number 2, you should select foods with 5 grams or more of fiber per serving. That is true, right? We always want to be looking on the lookout for foods that have 5 grams of fiber, not in the entire package, but per serving, right? And we know that non-starchy vegetables can help to prevent more than 12 different types of cancer. So this is really, really great information. So definitely incorporate as many different types of non-starchy vegetables into your diet. It does a world of good for your gut and for your overall health. And before we go today, I'm happy to take questions, but I'm also going just in our chat box. We love to hear from you. So we love to get your feedback from our session today. So I'm just going to drop our link for the evaluation. I promise it is painless. It takes about less than a minute, probably even sooner than this survey. So I'll drop this in our chat box right now. And as we get into our discussion, please feel free if you have any questions that you would like answered. We're happy to chat with you.